The first case of COVID-19 in Saskatchewan was announced on March 12th.
In this instance, it was a person who had traveled from Egypt.
The province advises all travelers returning to Canada to self-monitor for symptoms for 14 days. And the Juno Awards set to take place that weekend are cancelled. As a second case is announced, the province enacts measures to fight the spread.
The Chief Medical Health Officer orders that no public gathering of over 250 people in any one room should take place.
Meanwhile, 22 Saskatchewan healthcare staff attend a curling bonspiel in Edmonton. 11 would end up testing positive. A snowmobile rally takes place in Christopher Lake. It includes a dinner, which would eventually be tied to 24 cases. Travelers returning from international trips are now told to self-isolate for 14 days. As the seventh case of COVID-19 is reported, the province announces that school will be suspended indefinitely starting March 20th. A state of emergency is declared, which allows the province to enact certain measures. This includes limiting public gatherings to 50 people. And that number is further restricted just 2 days later.
So effective immediately. Public gatherings are now limited to no more than 25 people. Nightclubs, bars, and lounges must be closed. Effective on Monday, restaurants are required to close except for takeout and delivery services.
Public gatherings are lowered to no more than 10 people by March 25th. A list of essential services is released outlining what is allowed to continue. On March 30th, the province announces the first deaths of people who had tested positive for COVID-19.
And let me begin by offering our deepest condolences to the family and the friends of 2 Saskatchewan residents who have now lost their lives to COVID-19. Today's sad news is a sobering reminder for us all that COVID-19 is a dangerous and a deadly disease.
An outbreak is announced in the community of La Loche. A long-term care home is at the center, with a resident, staff member, and 2 others testing positive. Days later, the Premier announces the Reopen-Saskatchewan plan.
It's a plan that will be conducted in phases, and we will carefully monitor transmission and other factors during each of those phases, and we will adjust the plan if required.
A public health order restricts non-critical travel in northern Saskatchewan. Non-essential travel is not recommended between communities in the Northern Saskatchewan Administration District. The first phase of the Reopen Saskatchewan plan begins, allowing for the resumption of previously restricted medical services and allowing the opening of fishing and boat launches. On May 7th, the province confirms that students won't be returning to the classroom until at least September. Golfing and drive-in movie theaters are allowed to resume with physical distancing guidelines. Phase 2 of the Reopen Saskatchewan plan soon follows. It allows select retail businesses and personal services to resume. The Saskatchewan Health Authority also begins to phase in its resumption of services.
This is a much larger phase than Phase 1. A significant number of Saskatchewan businesses will reopen today, and a significant number of Saskatchewan people will have the opportunity to return to work.
By June, visitation to public health facilities starts to expand, and Phase 3 begins, allowing for the reopening of things like restaurants and gyms. The travel ban in northern Saskatchewan is lifted as well. Soon, playgrounds and beaches are also allowed to reopen. The province released its delayed budget on June 15th. It forecasts a $2.4 billion deficit.
This will not be a one-year fix. This is going to be a multi-year fix to get back to where we were. So I think I can safely say we probably won't be balanced a year from now either.
La Loche, meanwhile, is able to allow businesses in Phase 1 and 2 of the province's reopen plan to resume. Later that week, the Health Authority declares an outbreak in 2 Hutterite communities in southwest Saskatchewan. Days later, the authority says it has seen testing met with resistance in some colonies. The first guidelines to return students to the classroom are released on June 18th.
The precautionary measures within these guidelines will be implemented to reduce risk and include standards for cleaning and sanitation, along with measures for general operations, facilities, transportation, and programming.
The first part of Phase 4 of the Reopen plan allows outdoor pools, spray parks, and other outdoor activities to resume. A week later, libraries, museums, and theaters can open as well. The following day, the province released its final results for the 2019-20 fiscal year. It showed a deficit of $319 million. In July, a reduced number of Saskatchewan MLAs went back to work in the legislature as a delayed and shortened spring session got underway. The next part of Phase 4 of the Reopen plan allowed indoor sports and activities to resume. It also increased the number of people allowed to dine in restaurants. Visitation to healthcare facilities expands again to now include acute and long-term care, personal care, and group home settings. Casinos and bingo halls are also allowed to reopen, and by mid-July, La Loche reports 0 active cases of COVID-19. Around the same time, the Hatarian Safety Council calls on colonies to comply with COVID-19 regulations in an effort to reduce the stigma many Hutterites say they are experiencing. A familiar sign of summer returns as garage sales and door-to-door canvassing is allowed to resume. As case numbers continue to rise, the Hatarian Safety Council says they are disappointed that the province is still identifying cases in colonies.
The most cultural profiling has actually come from places like doctors' offices, whether dentists or medical or massage therapists or so forth. And what the council has been saying to these people is, don't do this based on a particular culture. This is a COVID issue, not a cultural/religious group issue.
Days later, the Premier addresses Hutterite communities directly.
Many are making the necessary adjustments, and for that I thank them. But there are a few that are not. This needs to change. It needs to change immediately. Every single one of us in this province has been asked to, and the vast majority have changed how we are living each and every day. You all need to as well. If you don't, many will get sick in your community. Some will get very sick. Some will die. We want to prevent that. We want to work with you to ensure that occurs.
By August, Saskatchewan tops 2,000 tests in one day for the first time. And the Safe Schools Plan is released. In it, school divisions are responsible for their own specific plans.
And Saskatchewan has chosen, in this particular instance, in Phase 1, as we want to open up schools in as most normal a way as possible, that masks won't be mandatory in our schools.
The Education Minister again speaks to the media days later. He highlights the province's plan to procure 6 million masks and says it is considering moving to Level 2 of its Safe Schools Plan. By August 11th, when asked about if new cases are in Hutterite colonies, the Chief Medical Health Officer says he will not comment on ethnocultural groups.
But I'm very conscious of the fact that I certainly don't want to keep pointing to specific cultural or religious groups in an ongoing fashion. I think we need to respect that, COVID can happen anywhere to anyone.
By mid-August, the Premier announces more measures for schools.
Students will begin classes on the Tuesday after Labor Day, September the 8th. This is a few days later than students would normally return to class, but it will provide teachers and school staff a few additional days to prepare their classrooms and the common areas for a safe return.
And by August 20th, nearly all Saskatchewan school divisions have announced that they will require students to wear masks when class resumes. In a request for internal data, CBC learns that 596 cases have been confirmed on Saskatchewan Hutterite colonies. 206 of these cases were not previously attributed as communal living cases. Nearly 6 months after school ended, students begin returning to class on September 8th.